Hello, Tech Pros, episode 123.
Make yourself uncomfortable as often as possible. That's what I do. And I think it's worked for me pretty well.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week, we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity. Wednesday, leadership. Thursday, technology. Friday, people and communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. And Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Jamie Dixon. Happy Thursday, Jamie.
Happy Thursday.
Are you excited and geeked out and ready to talk technology?
Oh, it's going to be fun. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, you bet. Jamie Dixon has been writing code for as long as he can remember and has been getting paid to do it since 1995. He was using C# and JavaScript almost exclusively until discovering F# and now combines all three languages for the problem at hand. He has a passion for discovering overlooked gems in datasets and merging software engineering techniques to scientific computing. When he codes for fun, he spends his time using fidgets, Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, or spending time in Kaggle competitions using F# or R. He's also the author of Mastering .NET Machine Learning. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I got a question. What is Kaggle? I've never heard of that, never worked with that before.
So Kaggle is the world's largest scientific computing website, as it were. And it's famous for its initial contest, which was Netflix, the Netflix Prize, and then also they have other ones like this, the Titanic Who Survived competition. So data scientists or geeks or just enthusiasts can sign up with a team or by themselves and try to compete. Corporations might offer a prize. I don't know what the richest prize in Kaggle's history was. I think someone said it was maybe like a couple $100,000.
Nice.
But it was from airlines trying to figure out the best route to oil and gas companies trying to figure out the optimal places for exploration. I'm currently working on one with a team of F-sharpers on a bakery company in Mexico that's trying to optimize or decrease the number of returns that they send out to their, when they send bread out to their distributors. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a great place to sort of learn about data science. And if you don't have perhaps a formal background in data science or statistics, it's a great place to sort of get experience in a real live setting. Kaggle has been accused of probably being you just come up with an overfitted solution, and that's possible. But it's a great place to sort of test your chops, and then most importantly, the community is great there. If you have questions, you have stumbling blocks, or you just want to see how some of the best people in the world do it, it's all out there on the forums, and you can look at the winning scripts and everything else. So it's a really neat place to sort of come up to speed on data science and work with a team and perhaps make some money. I have never made any money on Kaggle. I'll tell you that.
Well, I am definitely going to have to check it out because that's so very interesting to me. I will not be winning any money. I probably will never enter any of the competitions, but I would love to check out the problem sets and the solutions that people are coming up with and just get involved with that community. So my very limited experience with data science and machine learning is I actually work for an oil and gas company. I was there for 13 years in the IT department as a .NET developer when I first started way back in the day, .NET 1.1. And then kind of, did all that stuff for a long time and moved up into management. And when I left that industry about a year and a half ago now, we were just getting into early data science for that organization, right? So we had just onboarded our first Hadoop cluster and had spun it up. We had a couple of clusters, one just for the kind of proof of concept to prove out, this is what we want to do, and to do a little bit of R&D on it. And then we had just gotten together the production cluster. And we were really looking at the first problems that we wanted to try to tackle. So it's still very new to me. Don't have a lot of hands-on or leadership experience there, but have played around with it. Have looked at some of the problem sets in that energy sector. But I would love to learn from you about your experience. So here on Hello Tech Pros on Technology Thursdays, we always talk about the past, the present, and future of technology. So Jamie, what I'd like to do is start with your past in this area, right? If we talk about enterprise software development around machine learning, how machine learning is really getting democratized, and we talk about open data and IoT, all these things kind of merging together and coming together. But in the beginning, like in the beginning, way back in the day, it wasn't like that. So when did you get into space, and what was it like back then?
Well, actually, let me ask you a question, Chad. If I went to the president of that oil and gas company, or the CEO or whatever the title is of whoever is in charge, and I asked her, are you a software company or are you a oil and gas company? Right. What do you think they'd say?
I think leadership has turned over since I left, so I'm not sure. But knowing the culture when I left, it was definitely, we are an oil and gas company.
So that's interesting because so I'm a software. I've been coding. I'm a coder, and I'll do that. Hopefully, when I die and my fingers are on the keyboard. And I do notice when I talk to different people, I came from a background where what CIO stood for career is over. And I remember distinctly when I was in high school, my dad was the CIO of a hospital system. And he said, so what do you want to do when you go to college or whatever? And I said, I really like computers. I love when you bring, I didn't say this out. I was a teenager at the time, so I probably grunted 3 words. But, in the head it was, I love computers. I love when he brought the Texas Instrument home and I could type in BASIC or
nice.
Or it was just so much fun for me. And I said, so I'd love to do something in computers. My dad just shook his head slowly and said, don't get into computers. You're not going to make any money there. So this was in the 1980s or late 80s, I should say. I love my dad. He's not the best at advice for things like that, perhaps. But it's interesting because now I make a point not to tell my kids to do anything with computers. And if they want to do it, they'll figure it out. You don't have to force your kids into learning things early for them to be successful at it. If the passion's there, they'll figure it out. But you had career is over and no one does IT. And then we shifted completely to where in 2016, halfway it's over, the head of GE says, yeah, we're an information technology company. GE said that. Wow. Or the head of the largest agricultural company in the world says, yeah, we're pretty much an IT company. We're software. And you hear that and you think, holy cow, we've really come, I wouldn't say 180 degrees, but pretty close. So I think that certain companies that sort of maybe emphasize or think themselves as software and IT companies. And I don't know if they're doing it just like everyone threw .com at the back of their name because it was like the thing to increase shareholder value. But I do think people believe it. And so we've really sort of morphed as maybe a larger society of where computers are and how our industries are built. So to answer your question sort of indirectly is, so when I started, it was very much like you said. You worked for an industry and then you had an IT department. I actually started in marketing at a health insurance company doing financial forecasts, very, very sophisticated analysis of market segments and trading off, trying to basically build the price elasticity demand curves for certain areas and focusing our marketing dollars in certain places. And so I sort of did that and I really enjoyed it. Then some things happened and I said, you know what, I'm tired of sort of this analytical, statistical role. I want to get into software development. I want to build applications. Also, I got tired of not having enough data. And I'm like, well, this is at the time where if you wanted some more data, you had to go build and wireframe your own, database. Wow. So I started getting into software engineering more and more by way of a couple other positions. So now I'm at the point where I've sort of come back to it, and it's sort of interesting to me that people talk about the data scientist these days, and yeah, I can appreciate what the data scientist means, the title, but if you ask a lot of people what that word means, it's sort of depending on whatever their needs are. But you do have to know statistics, you do have to know operations, you do have to know software, you do have to know your data platforms and everything else. So it's a really interesting title. It's a really interesting movement in our industry. So we have two things, right? We have companies that are either getting technology and getting IT and getting software, which I agree with, or companies that are about to be put out of business by that former group. And the ones that are getting it are sort of saying, okay, we're going to get rid of we're not just wireframing databases, we're actually trying to build some analytical or predictive capability as an internal skill set, right? You might, these big companies, some of them might think, oh, it's still a good idea to offshore some of our software talent if we can think about saving money that way. But no one I know is thinking, oh, geez, from our predictive modeling or our analytical capabilities, we definitely want to keep that out of the house. They're trying to internalize that and try to build that skill set up within. So it's really interesting. And maybe I suffer from confirmation bias, but I sort of applaud that because I think, yeah, that's right. Companies that sort of can utilize technology and software to their best advantage and build a competitive advantage to that, I think, or I hope, will be successful. And I guess I'm saying that because I'm a practitioner, but I genuinely think that.
Yeah,
Is that too much?
no, that's perfect. That's awesome. And maybe I have confirmation bias, but there's probably a reason why I'm not at that organization anymore. I don't have anything negative to say. It was an awesome experience. It was a great decade and more of my life, and I learned so much. But it was definitely an uphill battle of fighting the culture of, look, we are not a software development shop. We are not a IT shop. We are an energy company, and it's all about getting the stuff out of the ground. I'm like, yeah, but we would know where to get it out of the ground. We would be more efficient in getting out of the ground. We would know how to keep our equipment up longer if we kind of looked at some of these new areas. And we were looking at them. We were investing in it. There was a lot of interesting new people that were joining the organization and doing great things. And some traction, some momentum had been made. But still an uphill battle. So I think there's probably a lot of companies that are maybe mid-size or maybe large, but not that kind of bleeding edge. Hey, we get it, we understand, we know where the future is headed, right? And so what can we do to learn? Like what the environment is today, like what are the options available today that maybe some companies need to take a look at and say, you know what, we do need to jump all into the machine learning, the big data, the IoT space.
Well, everyone says they're all in. I mean, you have to go to Wall Street, assuming it's a publicly traded company, and you have to have a story about big data. You have to have, just like you had to have a story about mobile a couple of years ago. So I get that. But for me, Chad, honestly, it starts at the top, and I don't know. I don't want to be so cynical to think that, you can't, after a certain point, people's minds don't change. You sort of have to wait for them to sort of retire or move on before a new group comes in. And then they can be the old guard that the new guard makes fun of. I find myself as I get older actually becoming less and less judgmental. And I also find myself getting less and less sort of, set in my ways. So I guess maybe that's a good thing. But it starts at the top. If you view your software development as simply a cost and not a strategic asset, if you view your ability to make decisions based on good analytical thinking, whether it's machine learning or building models to predict, or if you're still on descriptive data, whatever, and if that's simply a cost and not a way of building a strategic advantage, everything else trickles down. The org chart makes sense in that regard and that sort of thing. My hope is that those companies get overcome by other companies, the proof is in the pudding, other companies that do view it and then become more agile and more profitable and can sort of bury these other companies. I don't know, maybe that's too Darwinian, but and maybe it's cynical again for me to say hope that, but that's what I think will happen. It has to start at the highest levels and move down, because you can try guerrilla as best you can within organizations, and you can make do within a certain situation. But ours as an industry, as you know, is so fluid, and good people leave fairly quickly, and they don't put up with much. So if you're really trying to build an asset, it's really hard to keep people like that. So if you're trying to build assets and by the way, you're just a cost, no, it's not going to happen. So I don't know if that's too abstract, but that's what I think. It has to start with not just buzzwords for the Wall Street analysts, but actual capability and leaders who are willing to change and look around and perhaps take some risks.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, right? So when we think of enterprise software development, especially in those industries where software is not your primary product or your service that you're providing to the world, but you're doing something else and you're using software as a tool to get that job done, you really have to look at it. Is this the most important tool in your toolbox? And if not, then why not? And if so, then awesome. Let's get the best people who can do it. But if you don't value software development, right, then that's going to show, like you said, I completely agree with that. That's going to show from the top down to the way you do your recruiting, to the way you retain your talent, to the way that your processes work. So it's going to have a big impact. And if you want to attract and retain the top tier talent that will, be the best developers and best DevOps and best everything in the world, then you really have to make the investment and make it not just like, okay, this is a cost center, but this is a huge part of our company that we're going to double down on.
So it's interesting because I don't think any company is one tool away from success or any kind of differentiation. Like, people are sitting there trying to decide, should I use Tableau or should I use Power BI? Like it matters. Maybe it matters from a cost point of view. And the marketing people on both sides, obviously, they have mortgages, and I get that. But from a sort of looking at it from an objective point of view, or sort of maybe detached point of view, I should say. I don't know if I'm objective. I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's not the tools. It's sort of like, that video game Crisis 2. There's a great line where the guy said, it's not the person, it's not the weapon. It's not the person. It's a person inside the exosuit. That's the weapon. It's the tools with the right people at the right time with the right support structure that's really going to be the differentiation. At least in the conceivable future, you really need good people, making the selections about the tools that they think best, and also having the right support structure that they will take risks and they will be failure points, but they can be agile and smart enough to be able to react to that. Which is funny to me because you said you were a .NET developer. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I just got re-upped today, in fact.
Congrats.
Thanks. And my shtick, or where I came in, is from the F# point of view, which is a functional language or a functional first language as part of the Microsoft offering. And I get calls from recruiters pretty frequently, and and they say we're a dynamic, hard-hitting C# shop. We're doing all the latest and greatest. I say that's great. You want to have a conversation about F#? I mean, that's my only litmus test. And 8 out of the 10 of those dynamic, forward-thinking, agile shops are like, no, we can't. No. I'm like, what? Why? I mean, it's not that hard, and it's not that big of a barrier of adoption. And so I think, like you said, to sort of tease out the buzzwords from the reality. Every developer has their own sort of, like when you interview a developer, they're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them.
Absolutely.
And, they all have sort of their hot button things, but I think it really shows you that, the tools are important, but the environment, the people around them really makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there's this culture of stay with what we know, stick with what we know, and don't change. If you change the tool sets, that means we got to retrain all our people. It's going to take us years to get up to speed. It's going to, be a huge cost and all this kind of stuff. And I say, dude, that's complete crap, right? We should constantly be, maybe not, I don't want to say that shiny object syndrome is the way to go, right? Obviously, you don't want to adopt every single thing, but you have to constantly be looking at the horizon. You have to constantly be, improving your process, improving your tools, testing out things in small proof of concepts just to see kind of what is this thing, does it make sense in our space or not, and then really decide when you need to make a huge shift or when you need to make incremental shifts.
And it's funny because, I think people sort of separate scientific computing or data science from software development. And in fact, if you ask me, that both sides have something to learn from each other. In fact, I see good people being in the nexus between the two, which is a really fascinating position. But what you were just talking about, that's where data scientists has it over software development. Like, if they don't like a model, screw it, I'll try a new one, right?
Right.
And I guess maybe it's easier for them because they have actually, you talk about agile development over waterfall and whatnot. I mean, their iteration cycle is the REPL. They're trying things left and right. The problem is that they often or sometimes don't always keep track of where they were. So it's very hard to build reproducible results, and you certainly can't build a system that it's not reproducible or certainly production ready. But they have no compunction whatsoever saying, oh, this looks like kind of new. Let's try it. For them, it's just they're trying to solve problems. So yeah, I get that. It's different kinds of software, but still, you can definitely learn from each side, I guess.
It's funny how you kind of pointed out that that in machine learning or data science, right? That's where all the action is. It's so funny because I've seen that a few times where there may be multiple departments that are kind of doing the same thing, right? You could take a developer and rename him a data scientist, or you could take a data scientist, rename him a developer, and just kind of move them between departments in the same company, and they would have a completely different experience just by changing job titles and changing departments, right? And in some organizations that I've seen or been a part of, the classic C# developer, right, working on web apps is very much controlled into, these are the tools you're allowed to use, these are the processes you have to follow for change control, right? And it's very, very rigid. But then you take that same person, you put a data science hat on them, you move them over into a different department where the executives, as you said before, really, really value that space, and they see it as a huge investment and not a cost center. Then it's like, dude, what tools do you need? Just
You're right.
Here's the company credit card. Like, here's an open purchase order. Whatever you need, let's make it happen.
Yeah. MATLAB and SAS are hoping for that kind of attitude. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Jamie, in just a moment, I want to ask you about some of these other areas, related areas that we kind of mentioned at the beginning. We talked about IoT and open data and democratization of machine learning. What does all that kind of stuff mean? So we're going to touch on that in just a moment, but first we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. All right, we're back with Jamie Dixon, F# and machine learning extraordinaire. We've been talking to Jamie about all the changes in enterprise software development and how, what the way it used to be back in the day and the way it is today is it's almost a shift, right? And there's a big difference between companies who think individuals in software development or in IT are a cost center versus people who really value it as an investment and something that is going to change the way that we do business, and that change is a good thing. So, Jamie, we also have several other concepts in this space. Everybody's on the IoT bandwagon. We talk about open data. There's this concept of democratization of machine learning. So what does all that mean to you, and what can we look forward to in the future?
Wow, that's a lot of buzzwords. Let me, so I guess so starting from the top of that list, IoT, I guess the opposite of IoT is IOP, which is Internet of Person. I do wonder, you were mentioning the C# web devs before the break. I do wonder how much retooling they have to do. Because when you talk to a software developer, perhaps a business developer, and they're a web dev, so that up and down the stack, they know their T-SQL, they know their C#, they know their JavaScript, and perhaps they know some frameworks like TypeScript, or TypeScript helps them along. They know a framework like Angular or whatnot. You ask them, I'm a full stack developer, and full stack to me implies pancakes and syrup, so I get hungry. But but actually, what I've seen is that the stack is actually not a cylinder. It's more like an hourglass or a barbell, where it's very thin in the middle but very thick at the top. I have no idea how a, quote, full stack developer could keep track of everything that's happening on the client side. So I have to know how to do, again, I'm just using your prototypical C# dev that you're talking about. I got to know WinForms, I guess, maybe some WPF. I better know some web. And so I better know my MVC and whatnot. And I better know some Xamarin, and so I better know iOS and Android and the different flavors on top of Xamarin, even though it's supposed to get you all the way. I better know some the JavaScript frameworks. And so they get all that. And then, oh, by the way, we're throwing these things called bots at you, which actually have no visual components. All that CSS stuff, is completely irrelevant. And by the way, we're also throwing these non-human related things like IoT, which have their own protocols, which have their own things. And it's all that's all user experience, user being the device or a human being, and it's all sort of tailored to them. And then you finally get to the middle where you're trying to build software that might take some of that IoT and then do something with humans, or take humans and humans are walking around with these portable computers that they're sort of trying to be connected to. It's really fascinating because that's so much. I have no idea how a typical web dev who really focuses on the client side can keep track of it all, because it's so much. But meanwhile, on the other side of that hourglass, it's not just we're wireframing a database. You were talking about how you're introducing Hadoop, and maybe you got exposure to Spark too at the same time. But you got all this sort of, like, we're going to combine all these data sets and these sort of non-heterogeneous data sources, and it's not just SQL, it's NoSQL. I got to know something about, and by the way, I don't care about what happened yesterday. Tell me what's going to happen tomorrow. So suddenly I have to start learning machine learning modeling. And it's not just enough for me to do a one-off analysis. I have got to be able to take this and put it in production. I mean, that's another huge job. So, I don't know I guess full stack would be very thin, a very narrow pipe that goes up and down, but there's just so much. That it's absolutely incredible to me, like the breadth of what a person's supposed to know or should know, and trying to keep up with it is absolutely. I talk to people. I have no idea how some of these people do it. I really don't like the user interface. I don't like dealing with users. I don't care about, like I said, CSS or moving pixels left to right or wherever. I do it when I have to, certainly. But yeah, my interest is much more on the machine learning or on the server side. Maybe it's because of my background when I started as a market analyst and whatnot. But it is interesting because the sort of getting machine learning as a buzzword and data science as a buzzword, and everyone says, yeah, it's the greatest job in the world, and salaries are going to go to the moon, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a folks who are coming in from a non-traditional background to that, and I think it's a good thing. Because I think if you come from a non-traditional background, the tools themselves are a lot less expensive. You don't have to purchase a SaaS license anymore. You don't have to MATLAB. You can pick up R. You can pick up Python. If you're a .NET developer, you should be picking up F#. You can pick all that stuff up, and there's so many cool, interesting projects out there that are just waiting for people to look at and do things with. When we talk about in our industry how we've gone to open source, and Microsoft loves Linux, and C# is now open source is open source software. Mm-hmm. You think about those things as open source. Well, there's another, from a data analyst point of view or a research scientist point of view, there's the open data sort of what's available to you, which is different levels of government, whether it's your municipality, your state, your federal, if you're in the United States. They all have these huge data sets. They're appropriately scrubbed and whatnot, but they're starting to make them available for public consumption. So now, hey, I'm a non-traditional data scientist, as it were. Maybe I'm on Kaggle because I'm trying to true up my chops a little bit. What can I do to sort of learn and work with other motivated individuals? There's all these really cool projects out there. I'm working on one that's looking at garbage in the ocean, which is absolutely extraordinary. What individuals are doing on their own as part of a public-private partnership to go and start charting on our shores all the garbage they see. And then this huge swath of data, what can we do to analyze it? And hey, why don't we, instead of having those people going out there, why don't we build some IoT sensors on the shore that could be very good at identifying the quality of the water? And so you certainly start seeing this and you start getting exposure to these things. So I think I covered all those buzzwords you laid out, but for me, that's really interesting. I have no idea what's going to happen on the client side. Good luck to all you web devs who have to expand out to non-user interfaces as well as non-people interfaces. And on the server side, I mean, there's just so much there, and there's so many cool, interesting questions we can ask and answer. It's awesome.
It is awesome, and you're right. Each one of those buzzwords, man, we could take not just another whole episode for each one of those, but a series of episodes or an entire podcast dedicated to each one of those things, which I know there are out there, because there's just so much, and there's new stuff that's changing every day, new stuff that's added every day.
Sure.
So yeah, you're right. I don't know how quote unquote full stack developers keep up with it unless they're just very, very, very skinny, right? And I think that's probably, maybe we can have you back on a People Friday to talk about, the developer mindset and the, specialization versus generalization of a developer, because I personally feel that there's a time and a place for both of those. And even on the same team, right? I want some people who are very specialized. I want some people who are more generic, more generalized, because I find that kind of, across a team of maybe 8 or 10 or 12 developers, or even 3 or 4 developers, that kind of balances things, right? Because some people are going to really, really know their craft or know their tool set in depth and out, and can get that high level of productivity with that tool set. And then other people are just going to have that maybe cursory knowledge of each of the tool sets, each of the languages, each pieces of that stack, but they're going to be able to communicate with each of the specialized developers, right? Specialized folks, to kind of bring it all together.
You mean, so there's like the narrow focus on Stack Overflow versus the breadth in Stack Overflow? What your question? Yeah,
Maybe,
I'm with you.
maybe.
Sure, I'm happy to come back.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Jamie, before we go today, could you share some parting words of wisdom for our audience, the best way that we can connect with you? And then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, so wisdom. I don't know how wise I am, but I would encourage anyone who's listening, who's interested in this kind of stuff, to make yourself uncomfortable as often as possible. That's what I do, and I think it's worked for me pretty well. If you're comfortable, you're probably doing something wrong. And to make yourself uncomfortable, if you're interested in working on different projects, or you have any kind of insight for me, I'd love to hear it. You can reach me on Twitter at Jamie_Dixon. That's JAMIE_DIXON. The original, I thought I was the original Jamie Dixon. Jamie Dixon without the underscore is actually a JavaScript developer in England. I met him once. He's a great guy. And then there's Coach Dixon, who also used to coach the University of Pittsburgh's men's basketball team. I think he went somewhere else recently. He has the most followers, but, software development over basketball, dude. Code
Right.
versus entertainment. Yeah.
There you go. Nerds over jocks.
So yeah, thank you for having me on.
Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value your stories and your insight, and appreciate you taking time out of your busy Thursday to spend time with us.
Thank you, Chad.
Tech Pros, there's a lot out here on machine learning. I would recommend going out to this Kaggle. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go check it out. So come check it out with me. Let's learn some stuff together. You've been listening to Jamie Dixon, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/123. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Technology Thursday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I discuss people and communication. On Saturday, we talk entrepreneurship, Sunday, being unplugged, Monday, motivation, Tuesday, productivity, Wednesday, leadership, and back again on Thursday to discuss technology once again. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.